Fucetola has been consulting for us for about 3 years. He's a top lawyer when it comes to the EPA, the FDA, you name it, especially the FDA. And, of course, we also have some of the other top lawyers here on the broadcast as well to talk about the war on supplements, the war on health freedom, the MD medical mafia, which overall aren't bad people, but big pharma taking control of MD medicine, trying to basically shut down any debate even about plasticizers and McDonald's nuggets, you know, being bad for you. Well, fine, we're doing our job. McDonald's is going out of business. It's been on CNN. It's got plastic in it or plastic ingredients. And we're not even, you know, the UN wants to start restricting meat now. I'm talking about that later. That's a scam. I mean, look, everything will kill you. Too much water will kill you. But there is a medical mafia in this country. But the real reason I got him on today was what he really fights for is medical rights. And he was breaking down for me the fact that it's even worse than I know, the push to try to force inoculate in this country. And coming up, I have a video we're going to play part of. Investigate CDC fraud. Congressman calls for hearing on vaccine autism cover-up. And I have a link to it on Infowars.com. Bombshell. Vaccine cover-up imploding. And so more and more people are pointing out that the internal documents of the CDC and others show that they knew back in 2000 it was causing autism, and we've got doctors and whistleblowers and others going public. And there's other stuff contributing to autism as well, pesticides, you name it. But we're joined by Ralph Fucetola, vitaminlawyer.com. I really appreciate his time today. He had some Skype problems, so we just got him on to go over exactly what we're facing. We got a break here in a few minutes, a long 18-minute segment's coming up, but it's great when you've come down and visited us and worked with us on compliance and other things dealing with our nutraceuticals and InfoWarsLife.com. But this is separately on the vaccines today. Just how bad is it, Mr. Fucetola?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. Pleasure seeing you again. It was an interesting visit a couple of weeks ago. I met your great staff.
Well, we appreciate you coming down and spending time with us, my friend.
We're here because there is really a plot, if you will, a plan to take away our conscientious objector rights to vaccination, whether religious or philosophical rights. It's being done around the country. It's being led by NACHO, the National Association of County and City Health Officials, an organization that gets all of its money from the federal government, and it lobbies to take away our rights. That's one thing, one very important factor here. The other is that I appreciate the plug for the vitamin consultancy, but my passion is Natural Solutions Foundation and working on health freedom issues. And we found, when I say we, I mean General Bert Stubblebine and Dr. Rima Labo and myself, the 3 trustees of Natural Solutions, we found a solution to the issue. And the solution is summed up in a quote from General Bert. And he says, informed consent is the defining issue of the 21st century about vaccines and about a lot of other things as well. And so what we've looked at is, can the legislature of California, can it simply change the law and take away our rights? Can Governor Jerry Brownshire of that state just sign a law and get rid of our basic human rights? And the answer is no. There is a fundamental human right called informed consent, and that's what I want to talk about when we come back after the break. But
and of course, as a lawyer who's fought this in court, you're an expert on it. For folks that don't understand, they've lied and said it's the law forever. Now that we know it's not the law, they've been caught. Now they're trying to pass laws, but those themselves are fraud, correct?
Exactly. They violate international humanitarian law and treaties that bind the United States and its member states.
Amazing. We got about 30 seconds to break. What website should we visit to learn more specifically about what you just broke down?
Dr. Rima, truthreports.com. That's DRRIMA, truthreports.com. You'll find it there.
We need to get General Stubblebine and Dr. Labo back on the show. It's been too long.
Yeah.
Of course, he was the former head of Special Forces and the former head of Army Intelligence, and he says the mass culling has been...
You're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
I want to fly back to the future. Because you know the Renaissance started about 500 years ago. 1776 was seen worldwide by the entire Renaissance. From Japan to France, the historians said this is really a great thing. We should be like this. The French tried it. It was a total disaster called the French Revolution, then brought in Napoleon after that, the dictator. But time does keep slipping into the future. They keep saying, get rid of the Constitution, Bill of Rights, it's old. Declaration of Independence, it's old. And then they go back to classical tyranny that's thousands of years old. But even in ancient times, forced medical activities were rarely engaged in. And again, 500 years ago in the Renaissance, they began poking people that had smallpox with a toothpick, a sharp stick, and then they would come to you if you chose. And they said there was a risk. Sometimes it'd kill you, but a couple percentage points. And sometimes smallpox would kill 30% of people in the deep of winter in Europe. But they knew if you were healthy and got a small dose of it, if you got it when you were already worn down and sick, it'd kill you. But if you got it when you were healthy, then you had a lot better chance of living. So people would do it. But they even knew then in ancient manuscripts about how to inoculate somebody, that tell them there's a danger, tell them there's a chance it's going to kill them. Now they get up and say safe and effective, but you get the actual inserts. We're going to be showing you some MMR and some flu shot inserts for your TV viewer. Infowars.com/show, where it says it can kill you, it can give you type 2 diabetes, it can shut your pancreas off, it can cause narcolepsy, it can cause Guillain-Barré. I mean, there's got to be 100 things on this it can do to you. And then they just go up on the news and say, Alex Jones is a conspiracy theorist. He's crazy. He's lying. It never hurts you. But anybody who has family knows inoculation horror stories. Almost everyone I know's had some horror story. But me, because I've never really had vaccines. When I was like 4 years old, my uncle took a tetanus shot and it almost killed him. He was in the hospital for 2 weeks. My dad said, you know what, we're just not going to inoculate you. Informed consent. Rick Perry, as governor 9 years ago, said it's the law in Texas, take Gardasil, even though a bunch of girls had died in the trials. We went on air and said it's a hoax. There is no law. He told the health department it's on the list of recommended. Then they lie in the schools and say it's the law. You can pull the articles up. Texas law says Gardasil is compulsory. And every year they lie in August and say it's the law, you got to take these shots. Now, what happens is when they say it's compulsory, really they're saying it's a list of recommended. Vaccine liability protection kicks in. And then a drug they know is hurting people now gets government coverage and goes to a special court. Now I'm going to shut up and give our guest the floor. And I appreciate Ralph Fucetola joining us, one of the top vitamin lawyers in the country, to go over this, because this is his real passion, exposing this. He works for some of the biggest supplement companies in the world, but again, his passion is exposing this informed consent. They can pass a law tomorrow saying to go to school, you've got to have this, but then that's something they know is going to be fought out in the courts. Please continue breaking this down. And the good news that we have legal standing to say no, and how people should say no. It varies state to state, as you know, sir, but in general, as a lawyer, what advice you give people?
Okay, well, you got to start from the beginning, which is that I have a basic human right to decide what goes into my body. The Supreme Court said that in 2013. They said, we have never retreated from our position that you have a privacy interest whenever the government or an agent of the government ceases to pierce the skin. It's the case of Missouri versus McNeely. So it's a very up-to-date law. I have a right to say no, and that right is a right that's existed for thousands of years. From the very beginning of medicine, Hippocratic Oath, doctors used to swear that they would not engage in any medical intervention without the consent of the individual. Hey, look, wars have consequences, and one of the consequences of World War II was something called the Nuremberg trials. And after the major Nazi war criminals were taken care of in the main international trial, there were a series of what are called the subsequent Nuremberg trials. And one of those, and those were run by the U.S. government directly, by the way. It was not the international tribunal. And one of those trials was the famous Nazi doctors trial. And for that trial, a group of American scholars put together something called the Nuremberg Code, which was a compilation of what the law of informed consent had always been understood to be. That Nuremberg Code was then used to try the Nazi doctors, some of whom were hung for committing atrocities that included, of course, at every step of the way, violating informed consent. And that Nuremberg Code, because it was used to try...
We're trying to get Ralph Fucetola back on. You know, let's just go telephone with him if we have to, guys, because this is, yeah, absolutely, because this is important stuff. And I want to have him back up to finish this interview because people need to know their rights. And he's explaining to you, this is Nuremberg. This is the federal government in major high-level court rulings saying everything they're doing now is illegal. And the Supreme Court, just a few years ago, ruled the same way he's telling you as a lawyer. So it is a giant bluff. It's a giant hoax. But it has more teeth in it. I mean, Perry coming out and saying it's the law to take Gardasil was like somebody with no teeth trying to chew through leather. This has some teeth. Ralph Fucetola, we're going to have you back up when we get better internet someday, but we've got 8 minutes till break. Please continue. We're going back to the Nuremberg hearings, the Nuremberg trials of the Nazis.
Right.
Please continue.
Well, there's very specific language that was developed in that code, and that language is carried over to a federal statute, to an international convention, and it's the same language, and it basically says you cannot be coerced into giving up your informed consent rights. That means, for example, you can't be told in California you cannot, you will either get the shot or go to school. Now, if the state of California says that they're going to exclude any student from school who is not vaccinated, first of all, no court has ever approved that. In the past, they've only approved temporary exclusions during real epidemics. So I don't believe their law will ever get approved. But let's assume they can do that. If they can, that violates what's called unconstitutional condition. You cannot be forced to give up a right to get a benefit. In fact, California has a constitutional provision that says you must have a free public education. So if they say you can't go to public school because you don't have a vaccine, then they have to give you the alternative. They have to pay for the homeschooling. They have to pay for the tutor. They have to pay to let you go to a vaccine-free academy. Or else they're violating that child's right to a free public education. Very straightforward. You can't have it both ways, government. You can't, if you want to exclude unvaccinated, then you have to make provisions for them because they have a right to an education, too, under your own law. Now, as libertarian, I may not approve of public schools, but if you're going to have government schools and then say it's a right, you better very well treat all the children equally and take those who have made the choice not to be vaccinated, which is an informed consent decision. No government on this planet has a right to override. Then you have to take care of their benefits as well. You can't make it one or the other. So what we've done, Alex, is we've created the Advanced Vaccine Directive card. And it's a little wallet card, just like an I am a diabetic card, or just like some fundamentalist Christians carry a I do not accept blood transfusions card. The Advanced Vaccine Directive is an advanced health care directive, like a living will, and it says, I refuse all vaccines. I do not waive my informed consent right. The Supreme Court said, if you don't assert your informed consent right, you've waived it. Therefore, you must assert it. And normal procedure, if you are brought into an emergency room unconscious, is to look at your wallet or your purse to see if you have any of those medical cards in there. And this card needs to be there. People can get the card at Dr. Rima, truthreports.com. And you'll see there's a link right there. But we'd love them to tell us that they came from your show. And so if they'll put in they go there and they put into the little special code block, AJ, your initials, then we'll know it came from Alex Jones, and we can help support what you're doing as well, because it's really important that as many of these cards get into as many people's hands as possible. The more people who have the card, the more power the card will have. We need to assert our rights.
Absolutely, and people can also research the law for themselves in this history, make their own cards. People can also create their own organizations to resist this. I mean, it's in law. It's in our federal law, state laws, international law, Geneva Convention, as you know. And then now they call this stuff vaccines. More and more, it's re-engineering our bodies with live viruses. They have behavioral vaccines that are, quote, anti-stress that change the brain chemistry permanently. It's basically a targeted lobotomy. This is getting so high-tech as well.
You know, the person who can really address those issues is, of course, Dr. Rima Lebo. She's done some important work in that area. I hope you and can have her and General Byrd on soon. Byrd sees it so clearly, folks. It's part of an overall depopulation agenda, control agenda. They want less people, dumber people, more docile people. And all of the vaccines are aimed at creating that condition.
And by the way, the White House science czar wrote a book in '74, the year I was born, admitting it all. And the IQ is physically dropping. This isn't just an educational nurture. It's nature. We are being targeted. We are in trouble. And they can sit there with a straight face and say there are no side effects of vaccines. I'm going to show TV viewers right now where it says what it can do, including pancreatitis, type 2 diabetes.
Well, earlier, Alex, you alluded to the whistleblower and the congressional hearings that are going to be done. There's a Dr. Thompson, I believe, who's a CDC whistleblower who showed that the CDC attempted to destroy the records that show that the MMR vaccine targets young boys with autism and targets black boys at a much higher rate. When you compare the rate of autism among unvaccinated versus the kids who've had the MMR, it's 200% higher for all children and 500% higher for black children.
You're talking about boys. Yes, it's 200% for boys, blacks 500. Yep. Same thing with fluoride is 2, 3 to 4 times, depending on the study, worse for blacks. Undoubtedly, whether it's HIV or whether it's fluoride, it burns whites and Hispanics and Asians, but it really targets blacks. But I don't think we'll hear Melissa Harris Perry tell us about that on MSNBC.
I doubt it. But, folks, listening to people like Alex and doing your homework and then asserting your rights. You must assert your rights. And that's what that's the lesson. That's the message I want to get to everybody. Unless you assert it, you lose it. And Americans are good at asserting their rights. I tell you that.
Once Americans realize they're under attack, we want to be nice, we want to get along, but once we realize we're being screwed over, look out, the sleeping giant. We're going to play this clip when we come back. Investigate CDC fraud. Congressman calls for hearings on vaccine autism cover-up. Florida rep urges Congress to address claim that MMR vaccine at an early age leads to higher incidence of autism. Don Salazar wrote this article. The good news is more and more people are speaking out.
Exactly.
We're going to break about a minute and a half, but why do you think they're increasing their vaccine propaganda, trying to pass laws saying it's the law? Is that in desperation?
It is. As General Byrd has said, the great culling has begun. People need to go to drrimatruthreports.com and get that ebook from General Byrd. I believe that we'll all be seeing over the next few years, we will begin to see the human population actually declining as all of the factors, whether it's the GMOs or the vaccines or the other factors, begin to coalesce, and infertility and early demise and inability to carry to term and all those things begin to really take their toll. And then, of course, the great cry will be, for the government to somehow save us from what the government has created. I
agree. Ralph Fucetola is our guest. We're, of course, talking to our guest right now, going over some of the vaccine news with him. I wanted to play this clip. This, again, is Congressman Representative Bill Posey last week talking about what's coming out with different CDC and FDA whistleblowers. And there's more and more of them. We've been having them on as guests here. So let's go ahead and go to that clip.
I bring the following matter to the House floor. In August 2014, Dr. William Thompson, a senior scientist at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, worked with a whistleblower attorney to provide my office with documents related to a 2004 CDC study that examined the possibility of a relationship between mumps, measles, rubella, vaccines, and autism. In a statement released in August 2014, Dr. Thompson stated, "I regret that my co-authors and I omitted omitted statistically significant information in our 2004 article published in the Journal of
let's stop
Pediatrics.
right there. The full testimony is up on Infowars.com right now, but I wanted to just show you from the MMR Merck insert that it says it can cause Stevens-Johnson syndrome and then a whole bunch of other stuff, measles-like rashes, and it just goes on from there. Measles-like rashes. I mean, there's just page after page, narcolepsy, death, cancer, diabetes. I mean, it's incredible. It's just small Bible print. But you go to the store, the pharmacy, you go, are there any problems? No, honey, might make your arm a little sore. Don't listen to the conspiracy theorists. The shots are free. We love you. And now they've got, like, checkpoints where they stop and go, want a free flu shot? And they've never guessed the flu shot right for the year's mutation. It's total hoax. Gardasil's a hoax, all of it. That's what's crazy. They admit it doesn't even help you. Ralph, closing comments on this. We're going to have you up in the near future. Appreciate you coming on and your great work.
Anytime you want me, I'm happy to be on. Closing comments, informed consent is the defining issue of the 21st century, and it's not just about vaccines. But we want people to assert their rights. Do it on a card. Get the card we pre-printed. You can go to drrematruthreports.com and get it that way. We just want people to speak truth to power. And the truth
Absolutely.
is, I do not consent. And that's the truth.
Well, they've also need to get the facts and go out to the school boards, go out and just speak out about it. And believe me, it'll cause a chain reaction. They came within millimeters of not passing that law in California. Right. They're fighting it in Australia, as you know. This is very unpopular. It's unlawful. And we've just got to push back, just like we did with the TSA. And they've backed off a bunch.
Exactly, Alex. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to being on again.
You bet. I look forward to getting General Stubblebine and Dr. Labo on the show.
They're ready anytime you want them.
We're going to get them on the next week or two. Thank you very much. There he goes, folks.